What's going on? What's going on? So I guess people are thinking that maybe the Terrence Crawford versus Earl Spence fight is a definite go because of some kind of words that Brian Custer had said in the interview when he was interviewing Shakur Stevenson. I mean, one of the things that he said was, "Oh well, now that we know that the fight's going to happen in the fall, who do you think's going to win? That type of thing." And so people kind of not necessarily run with it, is asking the question also, does that mean that, hey, this fight is confirmed, this fight's a go between those two? And I'll just say, like with everything, I always go by history, I always go by patterns. And when it's come to Brian, pretty much he's not necessarily in the know of, when it comes to negotiations. He kind of just goes with the rumors like everybody else. What everybody else is kind of hearing, he kind of hears that. I don't know how PBC does it, but they keep everything like tight nipped when it comes to negotiations, and most of the time people aren't able to figure out what's going on. Even the quote insiders that sometimes pop up, like the Coppingers and everything, who make assumptions and supposedly know what's going on, and it ends up not necessarily being not ends up not being the case at all. Period. How many times have we seen fights just boom boom just become official, get announced where it's like, whoa, didn't even know that those fights were being certain fights were being negotiated. That's just how they are. So, different reports are coming out, from different people where think this might be happening, that might be happening. People might have this assumption, people might have that type of assumption. But from what I've seen when it comes, I don't know how they do it, but they keep everything, tight knit, man. It's very difficult to figure out what's going on. So from what I've seen, that's where pretty much Brian Custer gets his information from, and he wasn't confirming anything. He wasn't saying, "Hell yeah, this was." I think he's just believing that, hey, this, from what I'm hearing, and from the rumor mills, just like everybody else, this fight's probably going to happen in the fall, and maybe probably just being optimistic about happening. Um, but him actually having some quote insider information, even though he works with Showtime, I have to say pretty much for the most part, no. This is going to be one of those things, especially with a fight of this magnitude, and especially with two people where with somebody like a Terrence Crawford, where it's very things could turn sideways real quick. They're going to want to keep everything completely quiet, um, with no information at all getting out, so they can button down pretty much everything and get everything done. You know, um, I will say as long as everybody's quiet, you're not hearing anything, that's a positive thing. Knowing Terrence Crawford, as hard headed as he is, he's going to be trying to negotiate for whatever it is that he believes he's worth, and he's going to grind to the last freaking minute to get what he believes he's worth. I believe that's basically that's pretty much how he rolls. He's going to be hardcore when it comes to those negotiations. And there's nothing wrong with that, long as at the end of the day the fight happens. Long as you don't get to the point where they're like, you know what, F this, and they're walking away from it. And they walk away from me and say, you know what, we're done. Kind of like they had to basically do with Canelo Alvarez, where they said, you know what, we're cool, and they walked away from that situation. Then Canelo had to come back, to then get everything done with the Caleb plant because they thought they had some type of leverage. They took this, went over to the zone, said, hey, this is what we're being offered. We want this kind of amount. The zone said no, so they came back and then they got the fight. They got the fight done. So that's what I would say. I wouldn't pretty much ride anything into what he was saying, and as with a fight of this magnitude, as this is not an easy fight to do. This is a very very difficult fight to negotiate. It's going to be a difficult fight to negotiate, and something that's going to take some time. So that's all I would say when it comes to that. As long as people are being quiet, cool. That's a positive thing. People start talking, you start hearing this, start hearing rumblings like that, then that's when you're like, oh, okay, that's not a good sign. But while everybody's quiet, that's a good thing. But so hopefully we get it. Hopefully we get it. Hopefully everything gets done, everything gets negotiated, and it's a done deal, and we can get the bout that we want. But there's obviously going to be, regardless of what's going on, there's going to be a certain point where it's like, okay, this is what this is the best that we can do. This is the best that we can offer you. So it's going to be this or nothing. Like, you got to make a decision if you want to do this or not. If they're having a hard time negotiating, that's what's going to end up being, something like that. Then obviously everybody will have to move on. And if they move on, obviously, Terrence, Earl Spence was talking about moving up to 154 pounds. Me, I could see him fighting Fundora. I think that would be a huge fight. No belts involved, but still a massive fight, especially with the performance Fundora just had, and then the performance that Earl Spencer had just had. So me personally, I'm thinking that would be the fight that might happen, or they might do a Keith Thurman fight still at 147 pounds, with the rivalry that they've had, the back and forth that they've had. I could see something like that even happening. But that's believing it. That's the one fight he says he don't want to do. He doesn't want to actually do, ironically. But I think that's the only fight I could see him actually doing at 147 pounds. And the biggest fight I think that he could do at 154 would be the Fondor fight. So that could definitely be a possibility if everything didn't doesn't get situated. And as far as Terrence Crawford is concerned, I don't know what he would do. Because I don't, if he can't get this done, I don't see him necessarily working out anything with you at 147 pounds with anybody else. And at 154 pounds, Charlo, he's booked up, for at least two fights. So you're looking at a while before you, and then by then the WBC is going to be involved, on. So it'll be a while before you can even get that bout. Then if Terrence Earl Spence goes up, obviously he's going to release probably one or two belts, so Earl Spence can go ahead and fight for belts too. I could see him probably doing something like that, but them not necessarily fighting against each other. So he'd be at a tough spot. He'd be in a real tough spot. And people talked about how he could move up and get the mandatory right away with Charlo and this and that. I don't see him doing that without backing. You still need somebody backing you, a promoter. You need some bread behind you. If you don't have that behind you, you're not getting that. Just like Demetrius Andrews, he didn't get that when it came to Canelo Alvarez. So I don't see him getting that when it comes to pertains to Charlo, especially with no backing, no muscle behind you. You need him. You need an army. You know what I'm saying? You need an army. Floyd Mayweather was able to do what he was able to do in this game because he had that army. That army was Al Heyman. You know what I'm saying? Al Heyman, he had him, so he was able to do things. Devin Haney, he was the person he had couldn't do ish. It couldn't get the fights that he wanted once he got with Bob Arum, regardless of what Bob, because Bob Arum's gonna be stealing some money, doing some effed up stuff. And it's also obviously I've always said there's a peak to what you can get to when you're with Bob Arum, but he's able to get him those fights now. He got an army behind him that can get him those bouts that he wants and make him those backdoor moves that need to be made. So without Crawford having that with him, I don't even see him even being able to do that. So because of that, hopefully, especially with the whole Kinahan and everything that's going on with them, and them being pretty much shut down, he doesn't have that. He doesn't have that. He doesn't have that. That military, that power behind him. So I don't see him even with the whole going up and getting this shot at 154. I don't even see that happening. So because of all of that, I think obviously the best option for him would be to get this fight done. So and do this bout with Earl Spence. So you know, I don't see where else he could go. And at the end of the day, I don't think he's that dumb. I think he also understands that, hey, this is, the best option I have right now of what I can do. If this doesn't work, the future could look bleak, So we'll see. We'll see if, the bout gets done or not. Um, and like I said, he can negotiate as hard as he wants to. There's nothing absolutely wrong with that. You negotiate and you get every single thing that you can get, period. And you grind with that negotiations as hard as you need to get as you need to get every single penny, every single thing that you believe you're worth, period. But as long as the bout gets done, that's the main thing. As long as the bout gets done, so you have something. So you're not sitting there holding, on the sidelines again while another big fight with Earl Spence is going on, and you're not part of it. Where best case scenario, you're in the crowd watching it. You don't want to end up being that. So all we can do is wait and see what happens. And even if the fights gets done, there's all types of other things that need to get done as well. When it comes to the different sponsorships and everything like that that's going to be involved, setting up everything, whether it be a tour being set up, whatever. A lot of things, would be involved when it comes to this bout. A lot of things, which, yeah, for this year so far be the biggest fight, definitely so far this year, Gennady Golovkin, Canelo, that just ain't cutting it, especially on the zone in a closed platform. This will be it, this will definitely be it, period. Probably this, and then probably the Joshua versus Usyk. those would be the two. But as far as with Americas, this is it. Period. So we'll see what happens. But for now, like, subscribe, share. I'm out.